How to prepare a manga chapter step by step. That's what we will see today, as I'm right in the launching of my own manga, Illustrated Fairytales. For those who didn't see the news, pre-orders will start in a few days on Ulule for the French book. So if you want to support my work and discover my manga about classical fairy tales, then your participation in the financing of the book would make me so super happy, because it's really a super important project to me. So you'll see the little trailer and the link of the campaign in the description. And that being said, let's dive into how to create a manga chapter. Little disclaimer, please note that this is a manga project based on a script, so there is no extra work to create a universe, historical research, or anything else. However, although Illustfairy is a personal project, it's exactly the same procedure I use for manga commissions with clients who come to me with a defined story and where my role would be to represent the whole thing visually. First step, very basic, I read the text in one go. I have the whole story and I want to get a general idea. When there are descriptions of the universe, the settings, the physical appearance of the characters, or even important scenes, I underline them or add notes so that I can easily find everything when needed. Once the story is understood, we can move on to the more creative side. In general, the first thing I do after reading the texts is to create the character designs. What will the characters look like? For this, I take into account the text descriptions, if there are any, but also draw according to my feeling of the different scenes and how I understood the characters' actions while reading. Sometimes there are characters for whom I have an immediate, very clear vision after the first reading, and it only takes one or two texts to get their designs ready. Other times, it takes a lot more. For Andersen's The Little Mermaid, I imagined a curious but dreamy young woman, naturally beautiful without the need for any lavish outfits or jewelry. I got her overall design pretty much straight away, and the biggest job was to tweak her expression to have soft, dreamy eyes that look sad sometimes, fitting her desire to be part of the human world and to be noticed by the prince she loves but who doesn't love her back. She is really such a tragic character. On the other hand, I had a very hard time with the Sea Witch. Like, Disney's design of Ursula was so ingrained in my head that I had such a hard time letting go of it. And in the end, she ended up as a lifeless, skeletal character with mischievous eyes. The character creation always varies with every new protagonist, but the goal is really to see the character in front of me, with his design, his expressions, his gestures, basically seeing the character move, talk, and react. When I get there and I can see them moving and thinking in my head, that's when I know that the character is alive and that the character design part is finished. A very time-consuming part, but the most important of all, transcribing a story into visuals. Even with a pre-written script, it will always be necessary to change several elements. Cut or add dialogues, imagine the panels and layouts, the rhythm of the story's progress, which emotions the reader should feel. Here I take simple sheets of photocopy paper and divide them into two columns to create my pages face to face. This allows me to create more dynamic panels, to know where to place double pages, to lay out a coherent and dynamic narrative, and to encourage the reader to turn the page. I usually work scene by scene, so to keep The Little Mermaid as an example, I subdivided the scenes with 1. Introduction of the setting and the mermaids, 2. The protagonist swims to the surface and sees humans for the first time, 3. The storm and the rescue of the prince. Now, it's the way of doing that works best for me, but I try to run these different scenes through my head as if they were an animated movie that I'm watching as a spectator, trying to see the sequence, the angles, the dialogues, the emotions I should feel. And once I have my scene in my mind, I quickly write the texts on the side so I don't forget all the dialogues. Then, little by little, I replay the scene in my head with those texts this time visualizing the more exact visuals that fit my text, and I do the layout. At the same time, I draw some kinda funny stick figures to help me visualize the poses and proportions. This is the part that adds a little bit of joy to the whole series process, because honestly this is the part that makes me struggle the most, because it takes a lot of energy and concentration. But objectively speaking, it's really time well spent, like creating a skeleton for your story. Once you have that solid foundation in place, it's much easier to concentrate on the drawings. I do all my sketches traditionally on A4 paper, 110 gram with a simple HB pencil or H-lead pencil, depending on the details. Now, the goal is to take all the storyboard drafts and to transcribe them onto the right format. This is the basis on which I will draw afterwards. In preparation, I draw a border of about 1 cm all around the pages for the bleed edges in print format, and thus avoid placing important elements here. Then I place the right sizes of bubbles and boxes. I rewrite everything by hand, and I'm lucky that overall my writing is a similar size to the one that will be inserted digitally for the final book later on. This really helps me to readjust the size of the bubbles. Sometimes I notice that they need to be a bit bigger, or they can be smaller and thus free more space for the drawings. And to remember what comes here, again add my very glamorous stick figures, drawn very thinly though, because they will be erased afterwards. So yes, it's tedious, it's slow, but I need to have all this to draw afterwards and to reread my pages regularly while I'm in the actual process of drawing to get into the mood of the story. It's a job I do in a chain without interruption, because once you get into the rhythm, you can advance much more quickly. And then, finally, the real drawing process can begin. I gradually go back to my manga pages, erase the stick figures panel by panel, and redraw cleanly over them, this time with all the details, proportions, and everything. These are the final sketches, as they will be inked for the real book. As a notice, by the way, at this stage I don't bother working with a ruler at all. Professionally speaking, especially if you're just starting out, it's important to draw your boxes properly. Now, I usually estimate my pages this way because I've developed a kinda good eye for it over all these years, and I find that it allows me to be much freer in my drawing, so I'm kinda rebellious here, but it's definitely not recommended. After the traditional part, I move on to digital inking. The main reason I switched to digital last year is that it allows me to go into much more detail, because I love drawing every single hair and zooming in on the little details that nobody will ever see. Here too, I do line work in one go to be more efficient. I scan all the already drawn pages at the same time and color them with a little adjustment on Photoshop. It's more practical to ink with black on color rather than on grey pencil. For the formatting, I have a PSD template with the main layers I need. Basic inking, shading, backgrounds, text, speech bubbles and boxes, so I can just paste my scanned pages in. I started inking on a computer-connected XP Pen 15.6 Pro tablet, and for the past few months I've also been inking on a Samsung Galaxy Tab S6 Lite. Both work with Clip Studio Paint, which allows me to switch between the two if needed. The advantage being that the Samsung tablet can be used anywhere, at conventions, or in my living room where I've just started rewatching the whole Naruto anime to make things less boring. Honestly, from a line art point of view, you can't tell the difference between the two tablets, which is definitely amazing. In the beginning, I would work page by page, like inking everything with shadows, backgrounds, and all the details. After a while, with the book deadline coming closer, it started to stress me out that I wasn't seeing a big progress, so I did the basic inking outlines only, and kept the very time-consuming hatching for the shadows for later. Fast forward 2 months before launching campaign, and I started stressing out again, but this time because I only had the basic unfinished pages. So I went back to doing full pages, and now I alternate between the two depending on my mood and my stress level. It's kinda always the same when I have big projects like this. I always have phases between, oh, I totally got this deadline, and crap, I'll never finish. These are the big steps on the creative side, but there is still a lot of work besides to publish a manga, not directly related to a specific process, but important for the whole project. When the script is finished, I take my handwritten pages and retype all the text on the computer into a simple Word document. One line is equal to one speech bubble. Then the whole document is proofread to correct any mistakes, and the dialogue is inserted into the panels, which can then be exported as final pages. Since it's a very repetitive job, I usually wait until I have a significant number of pages or even a whole chapter before I do it all in a row. After that, even though I work on a production line to be more productive in most cases, the different parts are not always done in one go. There might be a week where I'm working simultaneously, let's say for instance on the storyboard for pages 20 to 30, but then sketching pages 10 to 20 and inking pages 1 to 10. But still, to keep up the pace and to work more efficiently, I keep blocks of time where I focus on one single aspect. For example, 2 hours of storyboarding in the morning, then 4 hours of inking in the afternoon. The hardest part is often getting motivated, but once you get into the mood, it comes much easier, so take advantage of it. Anyways, that's my manga creation process. Now about you. How do you proceed? Do you have any mangaka tips? Share your experience in the comments to inspire other aspiring manga artists. And once again, if you're interested, you can support the manga release of Illustrated Fairytales by pre-ordering your own copy with lots of gifts and bonuses on Ulule. I'm also announcing that I'm taking a break from YouTube to finish the manga because it's really my most cherished project and I really want to give it my all so that you can have a beautiful book on your shelves. I'm planning a 200 plus pages book, so there's still a lot of work to do, and I'm also fully invested in the whole marketing campaign on social media, interviews, promotions and stuff, so all my time is really going into bringing this manga to life in July. So if you want to stay in touch, I share all the behind the scenes on Ulule, on Instagram, in my personal newsletter on the first of the month, and in my Patreon journal. So if you feel like, see you there in the meantime. All the links are in the description, and don't forget to pre-order the manga. So thank you so much and see you soon.